Hello, everybody, and welcome yet again to Command Point. It is the third day of Kill Team, and I am here to talk about the Void-Dancers, the Harlequins, with none other than Matt Hoell. Matt, how's it going?
Good. How you doing?
Pretty good. You've been playing quite a bit of Void-Dancers since they've come out. How do you like them?
I like them a lot.
Yeah.
They're definitely a fun team.
So I guess let's kind of like dive right into our questions here. So for somebody that is new to Kill Team and they're kind of like poking their head in the door for the first time and they don't own any teams but they're looking and they're looking at Harlequin specifically, how would you, as somebody that's piloted this team quite a lot and played them quite a lot, how would you describe their kind of their play style in broad terms?
I think they're a pretty aggressive team,
Mm-hmm.
um, and that you really want to get into your opponent's face quickly because while everyone does have a 4 pinball save, they can't really weather a lot of firepower,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and that'll start shredding them really fast. So you need to get there. You need to get into combat where these guys really shine, and where like if you look at their strat ploys and their tactical ploys, like that is really their bread and butter. Where most of those are either geared towards protecting them from getting shot or hammering people in close combat, and not taking any damage in return. Like that is their main thing. Just because 4 damage takes them to health, half health.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and 5, they're injured.
Yeah.
So really, they're very much a glass cannon, a big glass cannon, but they really can't take a lot of hits.
For sure. Yeah, I would agree with that assessment. And I guess with all of that in mind, what you've just told me, how for you personally, what about that play style appealed to you, like to draw you to that team?
Yeah, I've always been a very aggressive player,
Yeah.
and I've always been a very close combat minded player. Like when I first started GW stuff, it was playing 40K and it was playing a corn army. Like
Hmm.
I want to run up and mash people in the face with close combat. Um, I don't like sitting back and shooting. That usually just gets really dull and boring for me. Like I really want to get in there and mix it up.
Yeah. Very cool. So how about like a learning curve? Like I would say that it wouldn't be super controversial to say that compared to a lot of bespoke teams, they don't have quite a high learning curve. But for you, what was the like? How many games did it take before you really started to click for you, and like you kind of started to understand the Void Dancers like play patterns and stuff?
Yeah, that I wouldn't disagree with that at all. And I think when they first came out, the numbers showed a lot of success. And I think that's because most players can pick these guys up and be pretty good at it.
Mm-hmm.
You can win local tournaments pretty easily with them. I wouldn't, but when you want to get into that higher level of play, it does take understanding the nuance of the team, when it comes to playing the Pathfinders, the Hunter Clade, the Vet Guard. And players who understand how to play those teams. Um, you definitely need to understand how the team works and how all the different pieces work together. I would say it took me about 6 games or so to
Okay.
really understand them, and to get that kind of top level play that you kind of need to run with the big dogs up there, so to speak.
Yeah, and I'd say there's like two parts to Void Dancers too, and tell me what you think about this. Where there's like a part of it where you're just learning how to use your operatives and like how to actually utilize them on the board, and then there's the other part which is understanding Sadath and how that ability works, and like once you kind of piece those two things together, then it really starts to make sense to you. And would you agree
And
with that?
yeah, I'd also layer in there on top of that, like understanding how their ploys work and when you want to use what ploys and how. But yeah, that's exactly right. The first part, learning how their guys work, is kind of the easiest part because it's like 3 APL, they fly. This is awesome. Like
Yeah,
nothing could be easier. I don't have to worry about like climbing over stuff, which is a pretty big deal in this game.
yeah.
So yeah, so I would definitely say that. I would say like those first two, and then understanding when and how to use deploys is another big one.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to paint a picture for you, Matt. Let's say you're playing at a tournament and you're playing Void Dancers, and I am at the tournament, but I'm not playing. I'm just walking by, and I stop at your table, and it's your turn, and I watch for like a minute or two. What is the coolest, biggest, flashiest play that you can imagine pulling off with Void Dancers that would like catch my eye as a spectator?
Um, Probably something along the lines of which is really what you have to do with them against horde teams
Mm-hmm.
is the single activation double kill.
Okay.
And generally that looks like charging your guy this really long bomb charge into one of their guys, murdering him, and then turning around and shooting someone else in the face.
Mm-hmm.
That is really how these guys work and how they win against horde teams. Is you need to be able to kill two or kill like 1.5 guys for each activation.
Yeah.
And that's always those are the big plays they make.
Right.
And where they're killing two guys and taking no damage back.
Yeah, and I mean bonus points too if it's a grenade you're throwing into like a cluster with that shooting action, and then you're getting like even more guys, right?
Right. Yeah.
Um,
It's tough because that grenade is kind of weak when you look at it on paper.
yeah.
It's only 3-4, and you can only take one of them now. When you used to be able to take a couple of them, it was a little bit better because you could spread out that threat. Nowadays, honestly, that grenade is more to force people to spread out. The second they see that on the table, they're getting their ruler out and they're measuring 2 inches. So very rarely does that actually you get the big play with the grenade against people because they just see it coming. They know it's like, all right, you got at least a 15 to 18 inch threat range with this grenade. I'm going to make sure my guys are spread out. And since it's just one, like they can measure the threat range and make sure those guys in that threat range are spread out, whereas people on the other side of the board can be all clustered together. So you really don't get those big grenade plays that you used to get where they were kind of forced to either completely spread out and keep guys out of cover, whereas now they just have to kind of spread out one group of guys.
Okay. Interesting. Very interesting. So, how about matchups wise? As far as like what's in the meta right now, competitively speaking, what would you say that Void Dancers are doing well against in the meta? Like, what are they strong against?
I think they're really good against anything with 7 wounds, and I think that's really what catapulted them up into the top level play when they first came out, because the top teams then were Pathfinders, Vet Guard, and Novitiates, all with 7 wounds. And these guys just destroy 7 wound teams.
Yeah.
Because I just run up, I tag your guy, he's dead, and then I shoot someone else with my shuriken pistol. And shuriken pistols can do a lot of damage just because of the rend and their 3-4 damage that they can kill a 7 wound model very easily.
For sure. Yeah, I mean that like some of these weapons, like you said the kiss with the crit damage that's just one shotting them, it's brutal.
Right. You take the kiss with epic, where if you don't roll any crits, you get a crit. So you're rolling 5 dice hitting on 3s. Statistically, you're going to get 1 hit. That now you turned it into a crit. That guy is dead instantly.
Yeah.
And
no
then
dice really even need to be rolled almost.
Right. If somehow you roll terrible, you still have a CP reroll in there. That can usually save you. But honestly, knock on wood, I've never had that problem where they just didn't roll up and kill a guy and then move on to something else.
Nice.
And so those were really their best matchups, I think. They really kind of excelled at those. And I think that's what catapulted them up so early on when they first came out.
For sure. And now how about let's flip the script. Let's talk about bad matchups. What do you think that they struggle a little bit more against?
Anything with a lot of wounds that's really good at 6 inches. Because at 6 inches, the domino field collapses and they start having a lot of problems. One of the toughest matches I've had, which I find really fun, which you might find funny, is Grey Knights. They come in there and they just get you within 6 inches and they just start rolling those dice on their guns, and they got to re-roll them all, and then they get to do it twice. So that's just, even with the 4 vulnerable save, when they're pushing through 4 hits almost very consistently twice, which is now 8 hits, they can kill a guy and a half a turn, which is what I want to be doing, not them. Space Marines, anything that can put out a lot of firepower at 6 inches, becomes very scary for the team. And they have the hit points that I can't kill them in one shot, which means now I'm actually having to fight you.
Yeah.
Now I have some ploys and stuff that I can bounce out before you strike, but I can only do that once. So I'm charging you and I'm getting stuck, and you're doing damage to me, and in most cases killing me outright, because a lot of those teams with the Marine teams, their close combat weapons are like 4 or 5.
Yeah, pretty good.
They just have to hit me twice, and then I'm dead.
How about, here's one that's not really, not a lot of shooting, but one that's really common right now that sounds really scary from within 6 inches, and you said a lot of wounds, is Gellerpox. Have you gotten the chance to play that matchup?
I haven't yet. I want to play some Gellerpox just to see what they're like, because I think they can be very scary, especially with so many operatives.
Oh yeah, they have so many. I think they have more wounds on like 4 of their guys than you do effectively on your whole team.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gellerpox are scary, and it's one I kind of keep asking about because they're kind of like one of the boogeymen right now.
Yeah.
All right. So one thing that I noticed that newer players, especially when they're playing a new faction, kind of struggle with is turn 1, particularly on open board. We'll focus on like what to do on turn 1, because a lot of the time that's one of the biggest hurdles. It's what do I want to do at the beginning of the game? Like, how do I want to set myself up for success, or even more so, how do I want to set myself up to not get totally wrecked on the first turn? So for Void Dancers, what's your kind of general approach on that turn 1?
So the general approach, the kind of stock turn 1 for Void Dancers, and this is kind of one of those things where, like I was saying, the newer players, this is very easy to do. But when you get into more advanced play, you'll actually find times when you actually might not want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
But what you do is you put everyone on engage except for your Shadow Seer, which is always on conceal.
Yeah.
You can use all his powers on conceal.
Yes.
You put Tragedy as your performance, as your Sadith, and then you throw in the Domino Field.
Mm-hmm.
So this does a lot of good things for you. One, as long as your guys are in cover and they're further than 6 inches from your enemy, they have a concealed as long as they didn't shoot.
Yep.
What that means is now you can start pushing your guys forward. And because everyone's unengaged, if an enemy comes close to you, if they come too close, you can charge them, which is great. Mm-hmm. Or you can at least start shooting them. And the domino field goes away, but you can pick and choose those things.
Mm-hmm.
So people with height advantage, people with special rules like the spotter for Vet Guard, you don't care about those. So that makes it just really easy. Then being on Tragedy is great, because if they shoot you and do damage to you, now you're getting one of your Sadith points.
Yeah.
And when those start racking up is really when you get hit to 4 is when the team becomes really scary. Mm-hmm. So now your opponent's in a big bind because they have to choose either I shoot you and give you points, or I don't shoot you, and now I'm set up for turn 2 charges across the board. And so that really puts them in a very strong position to do exactly what they want to do. And it puts the enemy in a tough position, because they're either like, well, they have to burn guys down, right? They have to shoot and kill them. Yeah. And sometimes you don't want to do that. Sometimes you just want to wound guys. And with their 4 Bimble save and being in cover like they're going to be, it's going to be really hard to kill them, even with 1 or, definitely with 1, but even 2 or 3 times, you might not kill them all the way. And meanwhile, I'm gaining the points I need.
Nice. I really like that answer. That's because, first of all, it's very thorough. And I think it really kind of nails down not only like kind of both sides to what I said, like how to keep yourself safe, and then how to promptly set yourself up for success in future turns. So how about something for you that, maybe you said it took about 6 games before it started to click with you. And for me, when I'm playing a team, there's usually like one thing that typically there's more than one thing, but there's always that one tip that like sticks out in my mind where it's like, man, I wish I figured this out 5 games ago. It would have made my life so much easier. So what is like this kind of level up cool tip that you have for somebody getting into Void Dancers?
Going off of that last question, you kind of start the stock strategy was start off in strategy, and then when you're about to start making your charges, you switch over to epic. That's the one that lets you resolve a crit if you didn't resolve any. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people see that and go, yeah, automatically do that against stuff with 7 wounds. And sometimes you do, but other times it's better to stay on Tragedy, because you want the defense against their shooting. Whereas when you're throwing 5 dice, you're probably going to roll a crit in there.
Yeah.
The chances are that you're not is very slim. Additionally, the guys you're playing against aren't very strong, so they're only doing 2 to 3 damage to you. So you can take a hit or two.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes what I would just do is stay on tragedy, but do a Kegaroth's Jest. That's the one where I can roll equal to or less than their weapon skill. They'll get like a vet guardsman who's hitting on like a Pathfinder who's hitting on a 5, anything but a 6, and you have to parry one of my attacks. And the thing is, they're only getting one hit if you're only hitting on 5s. So they swing at me. Maybe they get a hit. I block it. If they get 2 hits, I can take that damage, and then I can just use the rest of my hits to kill them, even if I don't roll that 6.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, the rest of my team is still retaining a defense die against their shooting. So kind of things like that where you want to start thinking out, where you start thinking outside of the box. And again, to see how the ploys kind of interact with the Sadith is really, really, really where you want to get to with the team.
Okay. Awesome. All right, then I have one more question for you. This is possibly the most important question. So, do you have a favorite Christmas song? And if so, what is it?
I'm going to get a lot of flack from this.
Okay.
I'm going to say All I Want for Christmas by Mariah Carey is a great song.
It's funny. It's funny you say that because nobody said that yet.
It gets overplayed, and I understand why people find it annoying. But considering like the quote unquote classic Christmas songs go from like the 50s with Scattered for like 30 years, you get a couple that are like, oh, that's a classic Christmas song. And then that one, like, it's a good song. I'm sorry.
It is. And, I was just saying to somebody the other day, there are way worse Christmas songs that I am extremely glad are not the song that gets super overplayed. So I like that answer.
All right,
and I think that pretty much concludes our interview. So obviously, thank you, Matt, again for coming on. It's always a pleasure. And as always, if you're listening, if you stumbled upon this video, watching, listening, whatever, and you're not subscribed, give us that subscribe. That would be super awesome. There's a lot more content coming out. There's several more days of Kill Team left for us to explore. And as always, special shout out to everybody over at patreon.com/commandpoint. And everybody subscribed on the YouTube membership. You guys are the best. As always, this is Command Point, Shane and Matt talking about Void Dancers, signing out.